It is increasingly recognised that there is a very strong overlap between trauma and homelessness, and that many of the difficulties experienced by homeless people have their origins in the trauma that they've suffered. And so this research was really important in trying to explore that relationship a bit further and understand better why the experience of trauma is so central to people becoming homeless and finding it difficult to move on from homelessness.
Northumbria University was commissioned to undertake this research in the spring of 2022. Firstly, it was about trying to understand and assess the prevalence of trauma amongst those who have experienced homelessness. It was about assessing the evidence base around what works in terms of supporting those who have experienced both trauma and homelessness to move on from homelessness. And it was also about supporting the development of a series of policy and practice recommendations to shape future provision. My colleague Jamie and I have been undertaking homelessness research for over a decade. So we've done lots of research looking at the causes of homelessness and people's lived experience of homelessness, movement on from this. And what had become very clear to us, particularly over recent years, was the centrality of trauma to people's experiences of homelessness. So over the hundreds of research interviews that we've conducted, individuals would often tell us that they had become homeless because of a series of traumatic events, that the experience of homelessness itself was very traumatic, and it was very difficult for them to move on from homelessness because of unresolved needs linked to trauma. So we were delighted to see this piece of research being commissioned where we could really shine a spotlight on the relationship between trauma and homelessness. It was a very positive experience working with Oasis Community Housing. They are very specialised in the area in which they work. Throughout this research, what was central was about avoiding the risk of traumatising any individuals who took part in the research. So what was central throughout the approach was about the well-being and the needs of service users, and actually facilitating and engaging in in-depth interviews and offering intense support to individuals to be able to participate in this research, and also offer kind of follow-up emotional support to those who took part in the research also.
Certainly the most striking finding of the research was the fact that 94% of those that experienced homelessness also had experienced trauma, and the research demonstrated that unless significant efforts are made to tackle the trauma of homeless people, there's really very little prospect of them being able to move on from their homelessness and to find a stable housing situation. The impacts of homelessness were so numerous and so widespread, and some people's experience of homelessness had been on so many occasions or for a prolonged period that it became a major factor in their life, and one that had to be taken account of, one that had to be supported if people were to have a realistic prospect of moving on.
Many of the participants told us that actually being homeless was very traumatic in itself, and often individuals had experienced sort of multiple episodes of homelessness which had this kind of cumulative and a compounding effect. And approximately a third of the participants who took part said that trauma was a key factor that was preventing them from being able to move on from homelessness. A trauma-informed approach is about recognising that individuals, service users that services are working with will have experienced trauma, and understanding how trauma can manifest itself in terms of a range of behaviours and needs. It's about recognising that, and it's about trying to respond to the specific needs that individuals will have. And critically within services, it's about trying to avoid or minimise the risk of re-traumatising individuals as far as possible. We really hope that this research will shine a spotlight on the importance and the centrality of trauma to people's experiences of homelessness, and it provides that critical evidence base that is needed for government and for organisations, local authorities work in this area to take action. If we do want to effectively respond to and tackle homelessness, then we have to give adequate attention and consideration to people's experiences of trauma.